here we are. Thank you for being a part of the Audit System. I'm Coach James, and today we are continuing our interview series, and we have a great guest, a guy that I have coached for several years now, and has just a great story to share, a great approach to running his real estate business, and I'm very happy to be his coach and to continue working with him. It's Lee Barrison. He is from the Infinity Real Estate Group, a part of Miramar Real Estate in Bakersfield, California. And we're going to kind of dig in a little bit here today to find out what makes Lee tick, where he's come from, where he's hoping to go, what he's learned along the way, and hopefully have some great information and some great things to share with you guys that you can go out and implement and duplicate in your business. So Lee, why don't you go ahead, just take a couple of minutes and share with everybody a little bit about where you've come from, your contact information for anybody who wants to reach out to you, and we'll kind of take it from there.
Okay, well, James, first off, I just want to say it's a big privilege to be here. I thank you for inviting me. I'm really excited about pouring a lot of value in today's hangout. So, yeah, my name is Lee Barrison. I've been in the business going on 14 years. I started as a single agent, and I've got a small team that I work with. And, I'm located in Bakersfield, California, which is about an hour and a half north of LA.
Okay, awesome. So one of the things you mentioned that you started off as a single agent, now you have a team. I think for a lot of agents, at least agents that I've coached over the years, there's always this idea that at some point they might also have a team. So let's talk for a minute to those agents who are still individual agents and they're sort of thinking ahead to the idea of having a team. Where did you start with building your team, and would you do anything different if you had to do it over again?
James, I don't think I'd do anything over again. All the trial and errors that came along with the growth, I guess, was a big learning curve, and I took a lot of weight from those challenges. But I think that if any agent out there wants to start a team, I think they first have to learn to go through the pain of being a single agent, a productive and a skillful type agent before they decide to create a team. Because if you're going to be leading others, you need to speak with experience of what you've been through in the past as an agent. So, as a single agent, I was a single agent for 11 years, and my bread and butter were for sell by owners and expireds, and learning the scripts and the dialogue and how to handle objections and how to get that appointment. And the grind that comes with being a single agent, that's the pain that I'm referring to, that you have to, I think that you need to learn prior to even thinking about creating a team. Because, in today's market, let's face it, it's a pretty good market in most places. And, people are just kind of grabbing each other and saying, hey, why don't you join my team and we'll build a team and so on. But, the problem is that if the market shifts, which it will, and if the leader of the team or if there's no experience of a shifting market on that team, then there's a lot of suffering going on, I guess, when the market does shift, which it will.
Yep, all the time. Market's always changing, and I think you're bringing out a good point, which is that as a single agent, you have to have learned how to handle success and have learned how to handle failure, because you are going to fail in a lot of different ways, however we choose to define that. But more importantly, your team members, as you add team members, they're going to fail too. And so you need to be able to come alongside and say, hey, you know what? It's okay. This is a same thing happened to me. This is how I handled it. This is how I worked through it. And to kind of be almost a counselor, right, as the team leader. So what was the level of production that you got to when you finally said, and by the way, when I speak about team, I'm not just talking about salespeople or ISAs or buyer's agents or whatever. I'm also referring, of course, to administrative people or transaction coordinators. So what was the level of production that you got to where you said, okay, you know what, enough's enough. I'm overwhelmed. I need some help. Like, where would you suggest with today's market that an agent might seriously start considering getting their first team member? And what would you add first?
Great question. administrative assistant or, an assistant to the agent would be the first hire. Because, once you get to a certain point in your production, you can only handle so much. And the first hire would always be an assistant. A lot of folks do hire a buyer agent prior to getting the assistant, but there's no administrative between that, So first hire was at 60 transactions. That was back in 2012. My hired an assistant. Shortly afterwards, hired a buyer's agent. That next year, we closed 84, and then we slowly and gradually started hiring more agents. And last year, was the best year yet, which we closed 141. So.
Okay, excellent. And at 141, what was the level of staff that you had to do that?
We had 4 not buyer agents. I don't like to subscribe to a buyer and listing agent type scenario. I want all my agents to be able to take listings if that's the case. So yeah, we hired 4 agents, and at this point at 141 last year, we had a full-time marketing gal, full-time TC, and a operations manager, which my assistant has floated into that position. So she's basically managing the accountability of the agents and making sure that everything flows correctly amongst the team.
But administratively, there's so much paperwork. There's so many details that now go into listing a property or selling a property, getting it through escrow. So I agree with you 100% that you need the administrative help, and you need to have defined the roles. You need to have checklists. You need to have job duties and descriptions so that, when that person comes on board, what you're going to have them do so they can become as profitable as possible, as quickly as possible. So sure. you kind of grew naturally over the last, sounds like about the last 4 years, from that first hire, right, all the way up to where you are today. So for the direction that you guys want to go, what is something that that you guys as a team still need for you to get to that next level? Or do you feel like you've got the assets in place right now to hit the goals that you have over the next couple of years?
Well, no, I don't think that we've got what we have in place right now in order to get to where we want to be. I've got some pretty good big goals for the team, and I think that we have the administrative side pretty well taken care of. There's a couple things that I'd like to add to the team eventually, such as like an ISA or another ISA, possibly an assistant to the operations manager. The goal this year for 2016 is to do 288 transactions. My 3-year goal, would be to get to about 500 transactions. My 5-year goal, I really want to close out 1,000 transactions here locally, which is unheard of. It hasn't happened. So, we do have some pretty big goals. I think they are obtainable, but no, we definitely would have to implement new personalities and stuff like that.
Okay, good. So always on the lookout for new talent, always looking to add staff, add buyer's agents to expand. So let's go back again to some of those earlier years. What were some of the things that you can think back on that if you were talking to agents who were maybe in the 20, 30, 40 transaction level, looking to get to 50, 60, 70 transactions, I guess advice from you who has kind of gone through that growth curve, what would be the 1 or 2 most important things that you would say, hey, you know what, if you want to make that kind of growth, these are the things that I really believe you would need to focus on. From your experience, what would you share with them?
James, I would suggest mastery, absolute mastery of everything about coming from ground zero to where you really want to be, So, if you're at 20, 30, 40 transactions a year, I think the very first thing that you're going to want to do is master the listing presentation. And when I say master the listing presentation, what I'm referring to is, if I were to grab an agent and put them in a room of 100 people and I just turn them on like a light switch, they're able to start the presentation without any, hang-ups at all. That's mastering the presentation. So unless you got it at that level, then you got to practice. And so I think my next suggestion would really be, in order to master anything, you have to allocate a lot of time into practicing the scripts and the skills and the dialogue, Because, let's face it, I mean, your average NFL team practices 60 hours a week to play a 3-hour game.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they get paid the big bucks. So
right.
What if we practice 60 hours a week? How good would we be? You know what I mean?
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, I think, perfecting your skills and number 3, James, I think conditioning yourself, conditioning yourself to be kind of like a robot, where you're robotic in your activities. It's the same thing every single day. You turn yourself on, you turn yourself off, but you're very, very predictable in your activities. And once you're able to condition yourself to those, to those activities, you more or less become unstoppable over time, I think.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So those are 3 things that I would really suggest as a new agent to really perfect. And that's the pain that I'm referring to. That's the pain and the agony of getting better and better in this business, which 80% of the agents don't want to do.
That's right.
So, they don't want to suffer the pain. They would prefer to buy the leads or, go out and, get a Zillow account or something like that, which just, it's not duplicatable. It's not predictable.
Okay. So you talk about mastering presentation, mastering the skills of lead generating and prospecting and just becoming a strong salesperson, and then becoming to the point, like you use the word predictable. And I think that's a great word, because you want to have some confidence that if you're going to do a certain thing, if you're going to follow certain schedules, follow a certain plan of action, that you have a pretty general idea of what that's going to produce for you. And I think part of that too, to determine if you're being predictable, is tracking your numbers, right? So how closely do you guys monitor your numbers? How important would you say that is for an agent to really get serious about just simply tracking what they do daily, weekly, monthly, and then maybe evaluating that with somebody to get some suggestions on improvement? Where does that fall in your scheme of things?
I think it falls in deeply, because we, it's one thing if you say what you're doing, but if you track your numbers and you show me your numbers, then, you as a coach, James, you've tracked my numbers and you can quickly identify what I'm doing right and what I'm doing wrong. So I don't need to tell you, I just need to show you. And that's where the numbers come in, because the numbers don't lie, and it's in the percentages, it's always going to balance out in percentages, so, I guess basically, like I tell my agents when they come on board, give me 90 days. I want to see your numbers for the first 90 days. And then every quarter we address those numbers, and I can quickly basically tell you what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong, and what where your strengths are, and where you need to improve.
Okay. So you mentioned when you got started, FSBOs and expireds were kind of your bread and butter, your forte. How has your approach personally for generating new business, how has that changed over the last few years? What have you done differently? Do you still do those kinds of things? Do you see yourself as getting to the point where you're really not going to be doing much active lead generation for yourself anymore?
Yeah, I do lead generate. But, for the past, I would say, for the past 6 months to a year, I really laid off the expired market, the for sale by owner market, because the agents that have joined the team have really embraced that market. And, I want them to be, and that's, I think once you embrace that market, that's when your confidence level goes up dramatically, because you're talking to people that have a lot of rejection, you know what I mean? But if they're embracing that, I want their confidence level to go up, and I don't want to compete with them. So I'm going to help them. I don't call for sale by owners, don't call expireds anymore. It feels pretty darn good, to be honest with you. But I am focusing deeply in my center of influence and my past clients, because we've got a pretty good database full of folks that, I need to stay in contact with. So that's my main focus. But, James, I think that, in my 5-year plan, if we're going to be closing 1,000 transactions in 5 years or less, I think it's more my job to be more of a coach, mentor, trainer for the team, accountability partner for the team, and let them build their business. I want to see everybody on the team succeed at a very, very high level, and I think that's where I come in more of a mentor for them.
Okay, very good. And I agree. I mean, I think that's the sort of the evolution of that model is to get to a point where you're just sort of overseeing. It doesn't mean you're not available to go out on appointments or take listings or negotiate, but really you're getting to a point where you are bringing up, as you said, you're sort of grooming the talent and almost duplicating yourself, really, creating
100%.
little mini Lees, right? A lot of mini Lees going around the office there, kind of duplicating what your journey looked like. So, again, as far as basics, I really, what I want to try to accomplish every time I interview somebody is to have the person that watches the interview come away with a little bit of inspiration. They kind of get excited watching one more person that's saying, hey, this is what I've done. This is what's possible. But I also want them to have some, I guess, some nuggets, some very specific things that they can say, okay, you know what? This agent said that this is what they say. This is what they do. This is what has worked. This is what they've learned to avoid. And so let's just talk about a couple of different groups specifically, like for sale by owners. What is, when you're working a FSBO and you want to be effective at getting more FSBO listings, what is maybe one thing that you've learned that you have to do with for sale by owners to really be successful with that group?
Well, you got to stay in constant contact with them, I think, number one. You know, because basically the agent that follows up the most is going to be the one that gets listed.
Okay.
So if you can separate yourself from the competition with that for sale by owner, then you're going to win the game every time, unless they sell the home themselves or decide to keep it. But in order to decrease the amount of contacts and get into the house for an appointment quicker, I think face to face, you know, belly to belly is always the best, you know, formula to approach them, because basically, you know, if I call you today and you're a for sale by owner, James, you don't know me, I don't know you. You know, I've got to basically verbally convince you to meet with me. So, you know, that first initial call is important because we want to pre-qualify them in a sense, you know, before even spinning our wheels on them. You know, if I call you and you tell me, hey, you know, I'm moving, I got a time frame, but my brother's an agent, I'm probably not going to try to fight that battle too much. Are you going to list with your brother? Absolutely. Great. Good luck. But if you have motivation and you have time frame, but you don't have an agent that you're convinced you're going to work with, then I got a chance. So then I'm going to go to the door next after that phone call, if I don't get the appointment on that call. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, I think that for sale by owners, the reason why they go for sale by owner a lot of times, James, and it's just my opinion, is that they don't see enough value behind what we do. You know, they just think we put a sign out in the front yard, we put it on the multiple listing service, drink some coffee, and wait for other agents to sell our listing.
Isn't that what you do? Isn't that what you
do? I wish, you know. But I think that when you can exemplify yourself as an aggressive agent and you're staying in constant contact with them, then you to why they should at least talk to you in person about getting their home on the market sold. Because when you exemplify aggressiveness and professionalism, and you're not afraid to drive out to the house and knock on the door, you're exemplifying something different versus that agent that just says, hey, you haven't sold a home yet, have you? You know, when are you going to list the home? You know, they get a lot of that. Plus, they also get a lot of agents that, you know, stop following up because they just don't have a system in place to follow up with.
Okay, good. So follow-up is absolutely the key to for sale by owners, hanging in there and understanding it's a numbers game, right? You're not going to get them all. There's only going to be a percentage of them that actually will give you an appointment and a percentage of them that will list with you. So I think it's making the commitment. If you're going to work for sale by owners, you've got to be committed to staying in touch. So give me an example of, again, follow-up. Let's say you've called a FSBO 2 or 3 times. They're still telling you they're going to wait, they're going to hold off. I mean, from a skills perspective, what is a key question that you are trying to ask in your follow-up to get an appointment? How, I mean, let's show these guys how simple it can be. What are you saying to a FSBO in a follow-up?
Sure. So James, ring.
Hello.
Hey James, it's Lee again with Miramar Real Estate. Hey, just curious, have you just had a chance to sell that home yet?
No, Lee. We've had a couple more showings this week. Haven't got it under contract yet, but we're not giving up. So I know you've called me 3 or 4 times, and we're still kind of hanging in there.
Okay. Well, hey James, I'm curious. You know, what can I do to help you today? Get you one step closer out to the Northwest.
Bring me a buyer. Do you have a buyer?
Sure. gosh, I mean, when would you like to get your first offer on the table?
Well, I mean, if you've got a buyer now, we'd like to take a look at it, I suppose. But you know, if you've got somebody that wants to look at the house, somebody that's serious, bring them by. You know, we've told you that.
I can appreciate that. And James, that's exactly why I'm calling, because I specialize in setting buyers up with my listings. So what I'd like to do is come out. I've got time at 4 or 6 to show you exactly how I can get you on the market and sold, but more importantly, get you out to the Northwest. What time works best?
Well, you know, like we've said, I'm not sure about paying the full commission. I mean, we're willing to pay you 2.5% if you bring me a buyer, but we're not willing to pay 6.
I can appreciate that. It sounds like you're a bottom line guy, James. And my intention is to get you the most amount of money. So when I come out and see you guys, I'll bring out a few commission structures that make sense to get the home sold, but it'll be fair for you, fair for me, but more importantly, allows the home to sell, because that is what you want, right?
That is what we want. Absolutely. So, I mean, if you want to bring some stuff by, we'll take a look at it, but you know, I'm not going to promise you anything.
I wouldn't expect you to list your home with me, James, unless you want to be sold. So would 4 or 6 work better for you?
We'll tell you what, we'll be home a little later today. Why don't you can stop by at 6.
Fair enough. I'll see you guys then. Thanks a lot.
Okay, good. So simple, right? Just questions. You know, trying to figure out what's important, how you can bring value. You brought out the objection, and now obviously in person, you're not handling the objection over the phone. In person, you're going to go talk about commission structure and just work on a way that makes sense to them. So perfect, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about, you talked about database. So a lot of agents are always wondering, well, what do I say to them every time I call? I've got past clients, I've got center of influence. I'm always worried that they're thinking I'm bothering them. And, you know, what am I going to tell them every time I call them? So again, how have you tried to simplify the process of staying in front of your database, your past clients and your COI?
Sure. Well, first off, you know, I think that conversation is only happening in our head, you know, that we're bothering them, that, you know, they don't want to hear from me. They think I'm desperate. You know, that's the drunk monkey that we all deal with. So, you know, I think first off, you got to have a strong mindset, understanding that these folks actually want to help you. You know, you've proven to them that you're a good agent. You've proven to them that you can get their home sold. And, you know, if they don't have anybody in mind, they're not rejecting you. They're just rejecting what you have to offer, you know. And so basically, if you don't plant the seed in their head, somebody else will, because people have lives and they go places where they are physically with other people. And when they hear somebody talk about buying or selling real estate, but you don't plant that seed, they don't talk about you. Mm-hmm. So it's important just to remind them that, hey, I'm still alive, I'm still in the business, and I was just curious to know, who do you know that's thinking about making a move? You know, well, we don't know anybody. Great. By the way, when do you plan on moving? Never. Perfect. If you guys have any plans, if you know somebody else that does have plans, please give me a call. Fair enough? Hang up. Next, right? That's as simple as it gets. But again, if you don't call these folks, somebody else will. And that's you know, there's nothing worse than not tapping into your database enough, because it's happened to me time and time again, James. Mm-hmm. But when you call them, because you haven't called them, and they say, oh, we just sold our home, because some agent came and knocked on the door.
Yep. Yep, that's right. Or we just had our friend, you know, or my coworker just bought a house. And, you know, I mean, a big part of this is educating them on the fact, as you were sort of talking about there, that, that you're available, that you want the business. And it doesn't mean that you're begging. I hear that all the time from agents, that they feel like if they bring up referrals, that in the mind of their past clients, in the mind of their COI, it's going to come across like they're begging. And I think what you said at the beginning, it's all up here. It's this mental conversation. But if you talk about the fact, hey, look, you know, we've had the opportunity so far this year to help a lot of people. We're really excited about the direction of the business. And, you know, frankly, my goal is to help as many people as I can with their real estate needs. So, you know, again, I just wanted to find out, is there anyone right now that you can think of that you know is talking about selling a home, buying a home, whatever the case might be? In other words, the way you ask the question isn't as important as the fact that you are asking the question. So, you know, I appreciate you sharing that. And I'll never forget, you know, when I was in real estate, there was a lady that I'd sold a house to, and she, you know, we kept in touch from time to time as a past client or whatever, but I'd called her one time, And because I had driven down the street and I saw the house kind of across the street in kitty corner had a for sale sign in the lawn. And I called her up and I said, my gosh, how did this happen? Did you just not know? Were you not talking to them about the fact that they were thinking of selling? And she said, oh my gosh, James, well, I kind of got word that they were thinking of moving, but I didn't think you really needed the business because you're already making $1 million. And I'm like, are you kidding? What do you think? Why would you think that I'm making $1 million? And she said, well, right on your business card, it says multi-million-dollar producer. And so, yeah, man, that's what they think, right? The public, they don't know the difference sometimes. So you've got to make sure you're continuously educating your database. And again, it doesn't have to be complicated. It's just the idea that you're talking to them regularly. You're bringing value. What can I do to help? What can I do to, offer you? So, we kind of touched on a few different ways to generate business there. What would you say, Lee, as you look back on even just the last 3 to 5 years in the business, what would you say has been the most significant change you've seen in the industry, and how have you tried to adapt to that?
In the past 3 to 5 years, being that the market's gotten so good, James, I see more agents relying on buying the business versus going out and getting it. At least locally here, there's not, there's very few agents that consistently go after for sale by owners expireds, which means that your competition is really low. But a lot of folks, I think, would rather they think it's a warm lead because the person registered on their site, or they think it's a warm lead because they've got their name and number. But it's not a warm lead because trust me, your site isn't the only site that they've been on. And they are more likely in communication with more than one agent. So, 13 years ago when I got in the business, there were no buying the business type deals, really. I mean, there weren't internet leads that you could purchase. I think that's really transitioned in the past 3 to 5 years. We've seen that really kind of jump through the roof, I guess, So, I would definitely suggest sticking to basics, James, sticking to good old fashioned real estate sales, because, you're an order taker when you're waiting for that internet lead to come in, and they're mostly buyers, by the way, you can either be an order taker or you can go out and talk to the people and get the business. And that's something that I think a lot of agents have gotten away from, which I think that they should really come back to, because again, it is duplicatable. It is predictable,
Yep. And the whole idea, of course, with finding phone numbers, getting in touch with people, that's changed a lot in the last 5 years, especially. That it is harder to get in touch with people. So, you have to be willing to invest in some systems that can try to get you more phone numbers and get you in front of these people. But at the end of the day, even if you're making colder calls, I mean, do you have people on your team that do any, like just listed, just sold calls, hot market calls? I mean, are you guys doing any of that at all? Or are most of your team members really sticking solely to FSBOs and expireds?
Yeah. I mean, well, we do have the Mojo system. We have 3 lines available. So basically, we can have 3 agents on Mojo or doing just sold at any given time. Do they use it? Not as often as they probably should. But it is available and it can get the numbers up there. But I think a lot of times with just listed, just sold, you got to really be in character when you're doing those type of calls, because you can easily get contactitis, just kind of blowing through the numbers when you're using those type of systems. So you need to mentally prepare yourself before getting on the dialers in order to really make the best of your time, because the just listed, just sold, I think, are really, they're lay-me-downs a lot of times. I've gotten listings from just listed, just sold because you're catching them before they put the home on the market. You're catching them before they're even talking to an agent. And, those have been probably some of the easiest listings that I've taken, are the just listed, just sold.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. And so, I guess one of the things that I've always been impressed with, I guess, as I've worked with you over the last several years, is the energy level and the excitement level that you always bring to the business, and the fact that you've always got goals. I remember a couple of years ago that you were sharing with me that you had a vision board, and that you were excited because you were able to check off and accomplish everything on that vision board. And I think the following year, yeah, of course, it changed everything up. And I can't remember off the top of my head if you got everything off of your goal board that particular year as well. But I mean, if you're really being honest, how often do you take time to spend, I should say, spend time thinking about your goals, getting your head in the game, trying to make a link between what you're trying to do every day and the rewards that you're going to have from doing it? I mean, mindset to me has always been a pretty important part of this business, but for you, honestly, how much time do you spend doing that? How much of your success do you attribute to working on your mindset regularly?
Well, mindset, it's become a really big thing for me because, I've got a lot of people that I've got to keep motivated. I've got a lot of people on the team that I expect results from. And if I'm walking around like a bump on a log, then of course that's going to set the group in motion in that direction as well. So, mindset is important. Podcasts, YouTube videos, books. There's tons of great books out there that I've read recently, that really influence the better mindset, especially as a leader and as a new leader. I haven't had years and years of experience leading agents, and teaching them, but as a leader, but I'm learning as I go. But the books that I read, podcasts that I listen to, these are all great fundamental things that you can use in order to really, keep the mindset nice and sharp at all times.
Okay. So
goals on the other hand, James.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I was going to mention, you mentioned something about goals. Recently, or we're on the 5th of next month, we're going to start a Think Big Mastermind tank with the agents because, you're right, dream boards, I'm really a fan of those because you can visualize what you see on the dream board, instead of just writing it out. It's awesome, but yet visualizing and putting it in front of you. I've got my dream board right in front of my desk, so it's virtually impossible for me not to look at it. But what I've come to realize recently, James, just in the past few weeks, is that I feel like my goals are too small. I feel like everybody's goals are too small. We're in a great country right now. This is the most profitable, there's endless amounts of money in this country that you can make. And we happen to be in one of the greatest businesses in the world where money or, commission checks are, you can have as many as you want.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like some of my goals aren't as big as they should be. So like, for instance, Mike Ferry, for instance, I remember at a Mike Ferry event a few years ago, he mentioned how, take your wife down to the Wynn Hotel tonight and have her put on a $200,000 watch and let her feel it, let her see it. Because again, what you feel and what you see eventually comes to reality, like the Earl Nightingale, the strangest secret, you are what you become or what you think about.
Yeah.
So we're going to revisit that here in the next few weeks to kind of really stretch our minds a little bit more than they should, or that we've stretched them in the past.
Okay. I think that's a great idea. And see, there again, that's part of being a leader. That's part of this process that you're learning of what does it take to really not just build a team and put people in place, but how do you enable them and equip them to be able to create success for themselves and ultimately create success for the team. And I'm so glad you mentioned that about educating yourself as a leader. I know you and I have talked about John Maxwell's books, and there's a number of good books out there that you or anybody else who's in the process of building a team probably could and should read on a regular basis. So, I want to, just take a couple more minutes here. I know for most people, I think 30 to 40 minutes is probably plenty of time for them to sit in and try to digest something. So, I guess as we think about wrapping up, and I do want to obviously bring in the element of coaching, training, and just kind of from your perspective, and it's obviously very easy in this type of a format to go into a very big, very glowing plug for coaching or training or whatever. But when you really assess, I guess for you, what it has meant to have training, to have coaching in general, and I don't just mean necessarily what you and I have done together in the last few years, but where does that rank in terms of, positive things, I guess, that you have done for your business? Because I know a lot of agents think about it. They consider the idea of coaching, but there's always this question of, A, can I afford it? And B, am I really going to get anything from it? Is it really going to make a difference in my business? So what would you say to that?
James, I mean, that's huge to me. Coaching is, I couldn't do without it. I think I spent over $200,000 in the past 13 years in coaching. And I've had a number of different coaches, all of them great, including you. I mean, you've been with me for 3 years, and I appreciate you. I mean, you've really, really you've helped me get to where I'm at right now. I mean, I blame a lot of that on you. But without a coach, then you don't have accountability. Again, let's refer back to the football team. I mean, does an NFL team not have a coach? They got to have a coach. And what does that coach do? Puts them in their place, makes sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do to get a ring. But yeah, I mean, right now I've got you as a coach. I've also got a business coach. I'm thinking about hiring a Tony Robbins coach, for this little thing up here. There's I don't think coaching should be considered an expense. I think coaching should be considered an investment. Yes. To you. So if you question yourself whether or not you think you can afford it, how can you not afford it? I guess that's the big question.
Yeah. Okay, and I appreciate that. So I think for for agents that are now, of course, this interview is coming to you guys who are watching this as a part of the Onnit system, right? The only name and training system that I've put together, and it's just one of the tools, I guess, that I figured would, my goal, of course, is to help provide value. It's to give agents everything they need to get to the next level. And, there is coaching available. There's obviously the real training classes available, which is another tool, another method for agents to get the information they need, get a little bit of accountability, get a little bit of exposure to some things that are going to improve their business. So for you, Lee, when you look back on that and you use the phrase, I couldn't be without it, which I can appreciate because of what I've done for the last basically 20 years. But I think for a lot of agents out there, it really does come down to that moment of just decision, right? Where you decide that, look, my career, my production, my income, my goals are important enough that I'm willing to take that step. I mean, when you first got involved, was it a little bit scary? Was it a little bit was there a little bit of unknown, or were you one of the ones that really jumped into it with a lot of excitement?
Well, I did jump into it with a lot of blind faith because I didn't know what to expect. But yeah, I mean, I was terrified. Nobody else in my office being coached. They all looked at me like I was crazy. But I think, James, what really convinced me that this is the right decision is by going to events, and seeing the other agents in the United States that are being coached and are committed to coaching. These guys are making a lot of money, and they're leading their particular industry where they're at. And that's kind of what convinced me is that, okay, this guy over here, he's been in the business for 25 years and he's been coached for 20 years. This guy over here, he's been in the business for 15 years, he's been coached for X amount of years, and they're killing their market. Well, if that's what they're doing, that's what I want to do. That's really what it comes down to.
There you go. So just look around, and again, success leaves clues, right? There's a blueprint, there's a pattern. If you look at agents like yourself who are doing well, have a continuously upward trending growth curve, there's hard work, there's a willingness to subscribe to the pain, so to speak, in the midst of it. And there's still pain, right? I mean, there's still challenges for you as you grow and add staff and work to keep people on track. I mean, it doesn't mean that all the pain, all the challenge goes away. It changes form. But when you embrace the desire to change, when you say, look, I want to move forward, there are things you have to commit to doing. And I would agree 100% for anyone who's watching this that is serious about really getting to the next level, to consider, if nothing else, getting into the real training. I mean, $75 a month for access to the most cutting edge information, live training. With that, you also get a live call-in show every week where you can ask any question you want. You can role play, you can pick the brain, my brain, or anybody else who happens to be taking that call at some point. But you know, it's access to information, it's the knowledge of how to implement it, and it's the example of people who are doing it and getting the results. And then again, the next level up from there is one-on-one coaching, getting that personal investment in you. So for any of you guys that are serious about that, then you definitely need to contact me, coachjameshoteling@gmail.com. And Lee, one more time, I want to make sure that anybody who is thinking about, or I should say who has a referral even, and knows of somebody that they can send your way, that they know how to get in touch with you there in Bakersfield. So why don't you go ahead and share information, and maybe also just do a little wrap up for today. What last thought would you want to leave for anybody who is watching this that has a desire to get to the next level? So contact info and your final thought, Lee.
Sure. Okay, so one more time, you can reach me at 661-213-6857. My email address is levonbarrison@gmail.com. That's L-E-V as in Victor O-N, Barrison, B as in boy, A-R-R-I-S-O-N @gmail.com. If they need any recommendations, or if they have questions about you, James, if they don't feel comfortable asking you, if they just want somebody who's had some experience working with you, you guys are also welcome to just give me a quick call, and I'd be happy to kind of give you my 2 cents on my experience working with James. Final thought, stick to the basics. Don't get all these systems. Don't indulge in all these little pay-per-click type deals. Stick to the basics. Master every single thing about the foundational fundamentals of this business, which would be your scripts, your dialogues, tonality. Everything about that is going to put more money in your pocket in a quicker amount of time. And it's what all the other agents out there are doing that have been successful for 20, 30 years that I've worked with. And so, yeah, that's basically it. Just stick to the basics. Don't get all these systems that twist your mind up and all that good stuff. Be predictable in your activities. Have a schedule that's time blocked, and follow that schedule. Even have an accountability partner hold you to that schedule to where they can punish you in some way if you don't do it, and that there will create results immediately. So.
Excellent. I appreciate that. Well, like I said, Lee, I know one of the things that, again, I've always loved about working with you, talking with you, is you find a way to have fun. You find a way to make sure that your team is having fun and bring that element into the business. So, I appreciate you sharing with us today. And again, it doesn't mean it's always easy, but if the road was easy, everybody would be taking that road. And the truth is that most agents simply aren't willing to do a lot of the things that you've shared with us, and that we know a lot of other top agents are doing. So congratulations to you, Lee. I mean, you guys really are building an enviable model for real estate there, not only in Bakersfield, but really anywhere in North America. So keep up the good work. I appreciate, again, your time today. And for, again, anybody that has a question for Lee, you know how to get in touch with him. For anybody that has a question for me, you know how to get in touch with me. So again, for the Onnit System, I am Coach James, and you guys have a fantastic rest of the day. Let's get out there and make today count.